Hey everybody. All right, so you can actually see me. Hopefully this helps a little bit with what we're going to learn. But I'm going to go over cognition, which is thinking, problem solving, creativity, and language. So if you look at your agenda that I've sent for you, the first thing you're supposed to do is watch this to help you with what you're reading. Please continue to keep reading. Most of you have probably already read through this chapter, but it's going to help go back and refresh it. We're going to do cognition this week, and then we'll do intelligence next week. Okay? You've got an assignment that you need to do. Open it, make a copy of it, share it with me. It's going to be graded. You've got a reading quiz to take. That's on Canvas. Open it up, take the quiz. It is timed, so be careful. Don't open it up unless you're ready to take it. And then remember, live classroom with me Tuesdays at 1 will be our standing appointment. So every Tuesday at 1 o'clock while we're out of school, we'll have a live session with me. Okay? All right, so let's talk about cognition. Are you ready? On the AP exam, I know it's going to be a little different this year, but I guarantee you they're still probably going to use the word cognition because they like to use that word so much. And when you have the word cognition, I just want you to replace it with the word thinking. All cognition is a fancy word for thinking, okay? Everything that goes with processing, understanding, remembering, communicating, all of that. Cognitive is just a fancy word for thinking, okay? The first part is going to be how our brain thinks. And then we're going to move into problem solving. So the first part for how our brain thinks, the big term that they want you to know is concept. And concept and prototype go together. A concept is the big picture. A prototype is the specific example. So your brain organizes everything in concepts. So for example, if we were in school and I said, hey, I need you to go run down to the science hall and get the chair that's outside of Miss Estridge's room for me. And you would go down there, you probably wouldn't question and stop and be like, well, what color chair? What's it going to look like? If I just said chair, you were going to go down and get whatever chair was outside of Miss Estridge's room. But what if when you went down there, there was a beanbag? I mean, technically a beanbag is a chair. It's just not your prototype of a chair. It would throw you off. Same thing where if we were outside and I said, oh my God, look at that bird. You would automatically look up because when you think bird, you're thinking of something that's in the sky. You wouldn't be looking on the ground for a penguin. But a penguin is a bird. So it fits the concept, but it doesn't fit your prototype. So the concept is the big picture. The prototype is the best mental image that we have that goes with the category. So the image that you see on your screen, you've got a penguin. Yes, a penguin is a bird, but this is more your prototype, something that looks like that. When I say chair, you're thinking of something that's got 4 legs on it and you're sitting on it off the ground. You're not thinking of a beanbag or like a blow-up chair that we used to rock in the 90s that you bought from Spencer's that was really cool. Everybody had one of those. They were so fun. That's not your prototype of a chair, so it may throw you off if I told you to go down and grab one. Okay, I'm going to skip that part. We're going to go down to problem solving. So problem solving obviously goes with thinking, with cognition, because we have to do this on a day-to-day basis. Okay, there are many ways to solve a problem. You know this word from math, an algorithm. An algorithm is a way to solve a problem, but the problem with an algorithm is it takes a really, really long time. You know from math, if you do an algorithm, you have to go step by step by step by step in order to get to the final solution. Versus if you used a shortcut, it would get you there faster, but it's not guaranteed to give you the right answer. So the pro of an algorithm, when you use an algorithm to solve a problem, is it's always going to give you the right answer. The negative of an algorithm is it takes a long time, and we're impatient people, so we don't like to use algorithms. The example that's in your book, which is the best example, is if you went grocery shopping and I told you to find Tabasco sauce. You could find Tabasco sauce by going down every single aisle and searching every single shelf, but that would obviously take forever. So what do? We use a shortcut and we go to the aisle that we think that it's going to be on. But by doing that, you could make a mistake and you could be wrong, but it's probably going to get you the answer faster. So the shortcut that I keep talking about is a heuristic. A heuristic is how we use shortcuts to solve problems. We eliminate what we know is wrong and we go to what is possibly right. So if I sent you to the grocery store to buy Tabasco sauce, you're not going to the freezer section because Tabasco sauce wouldn't be in the freezer section. You're not going where the milk and eggs are. You're not going down the cereal aisle. You know what to cut out, and you're going to go to the aisles that you think possibly could be right. Insight is the aha moment where you realize the correct answer to your problem. Interestingly enough, when we have insight moments in animals and in humans, it lights up an area of our brain in the temporal lobe. So the temporal lobe, more than just hearing, but it lights up that area in the temporal lobe. That's like your aha, oh, I figured it out. Here's the correct answer. So algorithm, gonna get the right answer, but it's gonna take a long time. Heuristic is a shortcut, but we cut out what we know is wrong and we go to what is possibly right. And we may make a mistake, but hopefully it will lead us to the right answer. Creativity, I'm not going to talk about a lot because you know what it means to be creative. Creativity is where you use something that's novel or new to come up with an answer to a problem. And here's a guy named Sternberg, who was a psychologist that came up with all the things that you need in order to be creative. The cartoon's really funny. He throws a cheese log into a fan and everybody holds up the crackers instead of cutting up the cheese log. Ha 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 ha. So we use creativity to solve problems, but you know what creativity is. Here are the words that you really need to focus on because you haven't heard these before and they're so important for your daily life. In order to solve problems, we have to have creativity, but there are things that block us. There are obstacles to us solving a problem. And here are all the things that block us from being able to solve problems. Number one is confirmation bias. The word bias, hopefully you know what that means. What we do when we are attempting to solve a problem is instead of solving it, we're only searching for information that confirms a bias that we have in the first place, okay? You know this is your parents. This is my parents specifically. They only search for information that confirms what they already think they know. Well, if you're only searching for information that confirms what you already think you know, you're not going to get any new information. You're going to get the same information. We're going to talk about them more with belief bias too. Fixation is where you cannot see a problem from a fresh perspective. You are fixated. How many of you have ever been stuck on a math problem or you've been doing some kind of puzzle and you cannot for the life of you figure it out and somebody walks over to you and goes, oh, it's this, and dink, fixes it, and you're like, how did you do that? I've been looking at this for 30 minutes. It's because you were so fixated, you couldn't look at it from a different perspective, and they could. There are two things that go with fixation: mental set and functional fixedness. Mental set is that you solve problems the way that you have previously solved problems. And I'm going to give you an example for this one because this drove me flipping nuts. This happened a year ago. Both my mother and my mother-in-law do this. Both of them do this. They both have smartphones. They both have smartphones. They will call me to ask me if I'm near a phone book to look up a phone number for them. What are they doing? They're using a mental set. They've always found phone numbers they didn't know by using a phone book. So that is their answer to solving a problem. If they need a phone number and they're not home, they call me to ask me to look it up. You have a smartphone. Guess what they could do? They could look it up on their smartphone, but they can't do that because they're predisposed to think in a certain way. That's their fixation. They're only fixated on being able to get a phone number from a phone book, not on the beauty of a smartphone. Functional fixedness is you only think of familiar functions for objects. So you ransack your house for a screwdriver to open up something you need a screwdriver for. You can't find a screwdriver. Well, a dime would have worked. Pinterest is the ultimate way to break functional fixedness. It tells you all the unusual ways you can use stuff. So this little problem on the side, hopefully you've seen this in your textbook. This is a really fun way to do. How can you take 6 matches and make an equilateral triangle? How can you take 6 matches and make an equilateral triangle? And then the other one is, how can you turn these 3 into a candle holder? These 3 objects right here into a candle holder. If you don't know the answer, you're probably ransacking your mind for it. That's how you make 6 matches and make an equilateral triangle. A lot of people don't think to do it in 3D, and if you do it in 3D, it gives you the answer. And then a lot of people don't think about dumping out the matches out of the matchbook holder, and then it makes a candle holder that you can attach to the wall. There you go. Your survival tip. I can't talk. All right. back to heuristics. So remember, when we're trying to solve a problem, an algorithm is the long way, a heuristic is the short way. A heuristic is a shortcut, but we're more likely to get something wrong if we use a heuristic. So a representative heuristic is the likelihood of things in terms of how well they represent a particular prototype. The representative heuristic example that your book gives you is if I introduce you to someone and they were short and they were bald and they had glasses and they were dressed in all black, would you believe they're a truck driver or that they teach the classics at an Ivy League institution? You're probably going to pick someone who teaches classics at an Ivy League institution. But overwhelmingly, if we do the math, the number of people in the United States who are classics professors at Ivy League institutions is probably 20 people. How many truck drivers there are in the United States? 1 million. So what's the more likely answer that I introduce you to someone that's a truck driver or a classics professor? By numbers, the truck driver is the right answer. But you were using a heuristic. You were using a shortcut. You were using that stereotype. And so you think that I was introducing you to a classics professor because they were short and had glasses and wore all black. Okay? So the likelihood of things in terms of how well they represent a prototype, which is the best example of your concept. The availability heuristic, the best example that I have for this is 9/11, which is over here. We'll talk about that in just a second. This is where you use a shortcut using information that you previously held, like that's right there in the back of your mind, to make your decision. So the faster that you remember an instance, the more often you think it can occur. So your boyfriend or girlfriend breaks a promise to you. The next time that they promise you something, you're not going to believe them that they're going to keep that promise, even though they've made you 1,000 promises that they've kept, but they just broke one. But the fact that that one that they broke is right there recent in your memory, you're going to use that as your decision making and say, no, I'm not going to trust you because you broke a promise to me, even though you're ignoring the 1,000 other promises that they kept. This little image right here, this cause of death. So when 9/11 happened, you guys weren't born or were like one. When 9/11 happened, it happened in September 11th. No one flew that Thanksgiving or Christmas, where those are the busiest travel times. Everyone gets on planes to go see people they love. Nobody flew that year. Everyone drove to their destination. And overwhelmingly, guess what happened that year? There were far more auto accidents that had fatalities, like people dying in a car crash, that we normally don't have at the holidays. People weren't using the correct information to make their decision. Obviously, the sting of watching 9/11 on TV and having it played over and over again on the media, that's what people were using to make the decision that they were not flying for the holidays because that could happen to them. So instead, they got in a car. But if you look at the correct information, the chances of you dying in an auto accident far surpass the chances of you dying in a terrorist attack. And unfortunately, that's what happened. Same thing for I think this one's very interesting. There's a way more likely chance that you'll kill yourself versus that somebody else will kill you. But yet, I'm terrified to go out at night in the dark because I'm sure somebody's out there and they're going to get me. That's because I'm using information that I see on TV, on, Law and Order episodes, on scary things that I watch, as opposed to actually looking at statistical data. So availability heuristic will lead you down a wrong decision, or to a wrong decision, rather. Overconfidence is where you overestimate the accuracy of your judgment and your knowledge. This is you guys before any test that we took in class. Once again, when you're overconfident, you don't stay up and you study, and then you realize, whoops, that was a bad idea. We always overestimate what our performance is going to be. Overconfident Hitler invaded Russia. And if you don't know your history, which hopefully you do, Hitler got his butt handed to him in Russia, and that's ultimately what helped lead us down the path to defeating the Nazis in World War II. Okay? All right, so I've only got 30 seconds left on this screencast-o-matic, so this is where I'm going to cut this video, and the next video will pick up with belief bias, which once again is my parents. See you in a second.